Well, I think the clear favourite is going to be Jakob Ingebrigtsen of Norway, who was the winner last year, but has gone on from strength to strength despite his tender age. He's just indefatigable. He competes so often. He even contested the 400 metres at his national youth championships as well as the 3,000 metres. He didn't win the 400, but he came second in 51 seconds, which isn't a bad turn of speed. So it's hard to look beyond him as for the potential champions.
Well, 109 men on the start line, according to the list we have in front of us, from 31 different countries. Well, if anybody is going to beat Ingebrigtsen, well, we could perhaps look at Louis Gilbert from France, European junior steeplechase. Keep saying junior, but it is under 20. European under 20 3,000 metre steeplechase bronze medalist. Jake Hayward is also very, very fine competitor on the track, reigning under 20 and under 18 European champion over 1,500 metres as we look down the full 103 men. Very good Serbian, Elvan Bibic we saw there, but unfortunately Bibic is slight injury, not in the best of form at the moment. Good Turkish team, disappointed with the Turkish performance in the under-20 women's race, but wonder if they can actually get some sort of redemption here. As always, the Slovakians delighted to be running in front of their home crowd. Quite a strong Spanish team, but as we saw again, taking perhaps the under-20 women's as a guide, not perhaps the conditions generally enjoyed by the Spaniards, the very good, perhaps the leading Spaniard, Tarico Navales. Hayward, as I mentioned, also a strong British team. The British always show well in these junior races. Robert Baumann there. If the name's familiar, he's the son of the 1992 Olympic 5,000 metre champion, Dieter Baumann. Some good Belgians there, including Van der Velde. So this is more like the conditions that you might face in Belgium.
On the big screen, the start list of this race. It's the biggest race of today.
Jakob Ingebrigtsen, equipped for the conditions. Those long sleeves now that are in vogue.
Jakob Ingebrigtsen from the famous Norway running family.
Well, Norway last year. Didn't get their team in the top 10 of the under-20 men's race, but they've sent a useful-looking squad again. I think the under-20 men's team race could be very closely contested, possibly a bit more closely than the under-20 women's.
Well, I was just thinking about that, Phil, because it's been won for the last 2 years by France. But a lot of their good juniors have now moved up to the under-23s.
So as we just wait for the instructions, and they're away. So the second of 7 races at this, the 2017 SPAR European Cross Country Championships here in the Slovakian town of Samorin. Russo and Gilbert to the fore. Russo really working hard at this stage. Barbaros of Turkey takes the early lead, 200 metres into this race. But over 100 runners strung out behind him. Well, Barbaros, recently on home soil, won the Balkan cross-country title. This is, in fact, his third appearance in this race, but not last year. But in 2015, he was 54th, and turning the clock back to 2014, when he would have only been 16 years of age, finished 31st. So the Romanians, Russo and Garcia at the front at the moment. Ingebrigtsen back in about 7th or 8th place. Very easy to spot figure. much taller than the vast majority of his contemporaries. Russo, I mentioned just before the gun went. He's wearing the beanie. Alongside him is not quite so well-known compatriot, Adrian Garcia. Did take the 3,000 metres bronze medal at the European Under-18 Championships last year in Tbilisi. Finished third in the Balkan cross-country championships recently.
Hello to our supporters from Italy and Romanian duo Icha.
Russo just glancing over his shoulder just to see where his teammate is at the moment. You can see Ingebrigtsen tight on the corner of the curve.
And I think Romania in this race are one of those countries that might benefit from the 3 to score rather than 4 to score, because they have Russo obviously, whose credentials you've listed. They've also got 2 really good mountain running internationals, which perhaps this isn't the sort of terrain that they're used to, but they're obviously quality distance runners. And if they can get near enough to the leaders to get the team score down for Romania, then a team medal is possible.
Yeah, Romania's never won a gold medal at this category. They have won medals, a couple of silvers and a few bronzes in the past, but never a gold medal, so that's going to be clear motivation for the Romanians. And there we saw it, the rather frozen water trap.
I think it's frozen over again since it was broken in the junior women's race. And the mayor of Samorin, when he gave the press conference yesterday, said he was praying for good weather. Well, I think his prayers have been answered, although it is very cold, but it is lovely and sunny, and it's not windy, because yesterday at this point, the chill factor was brutal.
Brutal. Well, I was here for a children's mixed relay competition at 2 in the afternoon yesterday, and the wind was scouring, I think is the word that springs to mind. We haven't really mentioned him, but up front, Will Richardson of Great Britain, Northern Ireland doing well. Second in the British trials last month. And has a very, very credible record. This is his first major international appearance, cross-country. Went to the Commonwealth Youth Games back in 2015. Really made a step up this year, Richardson. Note that he's coached by Peter Stewart, well-known former British international runner. So at the moment, as we're looking about 1,500 metres into this race, it's much steadier, much less frantic than the women's under-20 race. We've still got 2 Romanians up the front, Richardson, Ingebrigtsen. We're about a quarter of the way into this race. Well, it is the men's under-20 race. Don't worry about that on the right-hand side of your screen. So it's Richardson, Russo, Van der Velde up there, the young Belgian. Ingebrigtsen back in 4th. Turks, Atak and Barbara slipped back a little bit after the showing early in the race. So in fact it's Garcia rather than his better-known compatriot Russo, who's pushing the pace of the moment. Russo not that far off it though. Richardson though having a very good run at this stage. Now Ingebrigtsen, as we say that, just moving up onto the shoulder of Russo. Just keeping track of what's going on at the front, because Garcia just looks as though he just put in a little surge there.
6 points ahead of France, Belgium, Spain, Great Britain, Romania, Italy and Ireland completing the top 8.
And I think it's Turkey provisionally leading the team race. By the way, to give you an idea of how quickly they're running, that first full lap of 1500 metres was completed in 4:37. Harriet Knowles-Jones did 4:50 for her last lap.
Yes, as you can see on the screen, Turkey indeed are leading at the moment. I think over the course of the last few hundred metres, the Turkish runners have slipped back. That's obviously a slightly delayed point score. So we're well into the second lap now, and it's still Adrian Garcia leading the way. 10th at the World Junior Mountain Running Championships last year. Well, certainly on course for making a big improvement after finishing 59th in this race last year. Dorian Rousseau, better known compatriot, just behind him, followed by Will Richardson of Britain, Tim van der Velde up there in the yellow and black vest of Belgium, in the centre of your shot. Spain also packing well. Ingebrigtsen now having switched out onto the right-hand side of the leading group. What's your thoughts on this? Do you think that water trap should actually have been a bit wider? It doesn't really seem to be interrupting too many runners' stride. They seem to be taking it very, very comfortably. Could have done with being perhaps 50 centimetres or more a bit wider. Well,
if I was a runner, I'd be grateful.
The runners would be grateful.
But Garcia is of Romania. He's one of the mountain runners that I referred to, so I'm sure he's not bothered either way. He's used to much more rough terrain than that.
I think it's fair comment to say this is a technical but not very testing course by cross-country standards.
Yes, I would say that, and the hosts next year in Tilburg in Holland have promised real cross-country, but I think this is interesting.
Well, next year in Tilburg, we're actually due to be running around a wildlife park. There's a bit of debate about sort of whether the animals are actually going to be ushered into pens on that occasion. We might have some fun with that. But nevertheless, back to this race, and we do have Adrian Garcia still leading the way as he's done for so much of this race, as they now come in front of the starting pens. So they're just coming up about 200 metres away from starting the third long lap, where it's still two Romanians to the fore, and we've got Garcia and Novales up there with the Spaniards. They've moved through very, very well. Also Gonzalez, Miguel Gonzalez, 9th last year, mentioned him earlier in the programme, has moved up. Elvan Bibic, well, he's a long way back. Had huge success at the European Under-18 Championships last year, but do know that he has had some injury problems in the course of the last few months. There was a bit of a doubt whether he was going to be here. Well, so Yannick Alev, we haven't mentioned him, but he's up in the group. Barbara seems to be going backwards and forwards. Then 4 Spaniards in the top 10 at the moment. Kozlowski of Poland showing for the Poles in the 11th place. So still quite a big group with very little to separate them, a group of just over a dozen. Now Barbaras, having slipped right the way back to about 10th place, now moving forward. There you can see the 4 Spaniards all grouped together.
And Garcia completed that lap in exactly the same time as did the previous lap, 1500 metres, at 4:37. So the pace is, it's constant.
I think the penultimate lap is going to be the one where things change, because, frankly, if they leave it to the bell with 1500 metres to go, every other runner in this race knows that Ingebrigtsen's got that finish over the last kilometre. However, if one of these runners is courageous enough to make a long surge over that penultimate lap, well, things could be very interesting. Spain now taking the lead with those 4 men in the top 12. can see the spectators. Have to say, there's not that many spectators around this course. It's a question of the weather, I think. We are 20 kilometers from Bratislava. But nevertheless, despite the paucity of spectators, these are enthralling races. A terrific race in the under-20 women's just a short while ago. So it's Garcia still leading the way as he's been doing. And still a big group of about 18 runners before there's any daylight. Gonzalez and Umais from Spain moving up on the right-hand side. Navales there in the middle. One of the Spaniards opting for a long-sleeved vest. So for the penultimate time over the water jump. Well, this facility is used very, very extensively for training horses. A lot of the Middle Eastern owners bring their bloodstock here. I think that's one of the leftovers from perhaps the summer training months. So, leading the way at the front now, controlling the pace. It's Garcia of Romania on the inside. On his outside, Ingebrigtsen. Khalaf of France. We haven't mentioned much about Khalaf. He was the French under-20 cross-country champion earlier this year. Hasn't really got many credentials at cross-country. This is his first major international cross-country.
And I can see lurking on the inside there Ben Dykstra of Great Britain, the tall figure. He won the British trial race, and he's also known as a triathlete, youth Olympic champion. And there's quite a lot of triathletes, duathletes, aquathletes, orienteers in these championships.
Yeah, no, with coming into the last of the long laps. How do you assess the race so far? They're still very bunched together at the front. I've got a feeling this just plays into the hands of Ingebrigtsen, doesn't it? I mean, we could see a finish very similar to last year when he took off with about 700 metres to go, if I remember rightly.
Yes, he didn't actually completely rely on his sprint because he won by about 6 seconds in the end.
You can hear the bell. So there's just 1,570 metres to go now. Still most of the main protagonists from early in the race up there. Spaniards, I'm fairly sure the Spaniards are still leading the team competition. Richardson, who showed to the fore during the first half of the race, slipping back to 12th place at the moment, but still far from out of contention and certainly a contributor to the British team standings. But at the moment it's Garcia of Romania and Ingebrigtsen who are towing a group of about 12 to 15 men. Still very, very closely matched. Nothing like the reduction in numbers that we saw in the under-20 race. There's Richardson. So I make it 12 in the leading group. Richardson just having slipped back. 12 before there's a few metres of daylight.
It did speed up a little bit in that last lap, Phil. 4:33 for that last 1,500-metre lap.
So Spain it is, followed by France and Great Britain, Northern Ireland. That's the 1, 2, 3 in the team standings as we head into the last of the long laps. Well, Rusu's lost his hat and is now making his long surge for home. In fact, sorry, I said Rusu, but it looks very similar, and the Romanian apparel is not dissimilar, especially in the shade to the French And it's Louis Gilabert who's come through. Gilabert, the European under-20 steeplechase bronze medalist. An event at which Ingebrigtsen won gold back in Grosseto in July. So the French having come through very well indeed. 4 Spaniards in the top 10 as well.
It looks as if it's going to be between France and Spain for that team title. So those placings of those two French, the initial French, is going to be very important.
Still up there as well is Barbaros from Turkey. So that increases speed. I've seen the leading group dwindle down to 6 men. 2 Frenchmen, Ingebrigtsen of Norway, Turkish runner Barbaros, and the leading Spaniard Miguel Gonzalez. Now quite a gap back to a trio of Spaniards following in their wake. Halef, the other Frenchman, up there in the main group now. I have to say, Gilabert, courageous bid for home from 1,500 metres, but now we're coming into just a couple of 100 metres from home, and it's Barbaros attacking, but Ingebrigtsen just tracking him. Halef drifting off. So too Gonzalez. Barbaros now desperately trying to shake off Ingebrigtsen. Ingebrigtsen, though, just looking very calm and collected. Gilabert looking behind him, starting to look very tired, but it's Halef who's really... But now they turn the final corner, 70 metres into the finish line. Now Ingebrigtsen goes through the gears. Jakob Ingebrigtsen just flows into motion and stretches away from Barbaros of Turkey. Gold for the second year running in this event goes to Jakob Ingebrigtsen of Norway. Silver, Barbaros of Turkey. And Gilabert of France takes the bronze. Halef 4th. Just missing out on the medals. But Ingebrigtsen, well, he's got every weapon in his armoury to be able to deal with any threat at this level. 2-time gold medalists at the European Under-20 Championships on the track during the summer. Youngest ever Under-20 cross-country champion at European level 12 months ago in Chia. Jakob Ingebrigtsen retains his title and adds to what's been a glorious year for Norwegian athletics.
And I have to admit, Phil, he wasn't quite as dominant as I thought. Now his older brother Philip is out with the flu. I wonder if Jakob might be a little bit under the weather as well. But what a surprise again, as there was in the junior race for the silver medal. Who would have thought Barbaros would come through? Well,
he did win, and he looked very good. I was tracking the results and a little bit of the race when he won the Balkan junior title and beat some good people in that race, like Russo, who featured during the course of the race. What also impressed me was Gilabert, who we did mention, but we're perhaps not considering as a strong medal contender. He did pick up the bronze, admittedly, over the barriers in the 3,000-metre steeplechase in Grosseto. But he came through very, very well in that penultimate lap from a long way back. So, an enthralling race. I don't know, when you say he wasn't very dominant, I think he just knew exactly what was required to win that race. He knew he had the finishing speed, the endurance to stay with whatever anybody else in the field could throw at him. So, and you look at him now, hardly out of breath, he'll be quickly warming down, I think. He could almost come back and run the middle distance relay later.
Well, my Norwegian contact said he thought he could do very well in the senior race.
Yeah, it's just confirmation of the standings and the times. Indeed, Ingebrigtsen, 6,230 metres, 18:39, followed home by Ramazan Barbaros from Turkey and Louis Gilabert of France. They're the 3 men who later on today will be standing on the podium. William Richardson, who showed early in the race, slipped back to 25th place. Jake Hayward, European under-20 1500 metre champion, a little bit further back. Pierre Proust, well, might well get a place on the podium as part of a medal-winning French team, but expecting more from him. Stefan Schmidt as well, perhaps athlete we were expecting a little bit more from the Austrian. I was looking at Schmidt at maybe getting a top 10, top 15 place.